Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, September 6th, 2024. This week, Colorado courts are just insane. The latest on the school shootings in Georgia, and the armorer for the movie Rust was caught hiding a revolver up her butt. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And we're back with more true crime this week with me, your host, James Renner. How are you? I've missed you. Hey, if you like this show, what we do here is we bring you the latest true crime news every Friday morning. If you like it, leave us a little review, throw some stars up on Apple or Spotify or, wherever you get your podcast. It always helps. It's how podcasts get their wings. And I've been adding little extras on my YouTube channel. If you want to jump over to True Crime This Week on YouTube, on Tuesday of this week, or Wednesday I think it was, I added a new short video about the Amy Lynn Bradley case. It's the subject of a book I'm writing that'll come out in a couple years. It's a case about a woman who disappeared off a cruise ship in 1998. And for the first time, I walk you through the actual ship. We go aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas, and I show you the layout, and you get a better picture of the location of where she was last seen. So check it out up on the YouTube channel. And as always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from court where he was unfortunately indicted on charges that he took money from Russia to post about Trump on social media. Now, he didn't do it because he's MAGA. He's still trying to pay down student loans. So, give him a break. Everybody deserves a second chance. Walter, thanks for being here. Let's jump over to the top story, shall we? This is a crazy week in true crime. And at the top, before we get to the shootings, I want to tell you about something that's happening in Colorado right now. And it is about the craziest true crime story I've heard in a long time. A mother in Colorado has found herself in a legal nightmare. She's in jail right now for interfering with a court-ordered therapist who wanted her children to spend time with her cop ex-husband, who's currently charged with raping their daughter. This case just gets more insane the closer you look at it. I'm going to walk you through what we know right now. Rachel Pickrel-Hawkins is in the middle of a contentious divorce with Michael Hawkins. They have 6 kids together, including 2 older daughters whom Michael adopted after meeting Rachel. Michael wants sole custody of their 2 boys, who are 10 and 13 years old, according to an extensive article in the Denver Gazette. And I linked to that article in the liner notes of this podcast. If you're at all interested, go check it out. It's great writing. Their 17-year-old daughter claims that Hawkins began raping her when she was 6 years old and continued to assault her throughout her childhood. Rachel's 2 older daughters also claim that they were sexually abused. And their oldest son claims Michael tried to drown him in a pool after he caught his dad with his hands down his sister's underwear. As part of the divorce proceedings, a family court judge ordered that Rachel take the boys to a weekly 2-hour reunification therapy session so that they could reconnect with their father. And then they told her to pay for it. These therapy sessions, by the way, took place at Lighthouse Christian Counseling. The therapist is a woman named Christine Bassett, and during one therapy session, she allegedly told Rachel's children, quote, "We need to make progress, and today you need to tell your father that you forgive him," end quote. Michael was charged on July 29th with 7 felony counts of sexual assault on a child after a 2-year investigation by the Castle Rock Police Department. He was released on bond. So he's free, she's in jail. Michael was a cop with the Aurora Police Department in Colorado, and if that's ringing any true crime bells in your head, that's right, it's the town where 24-year-old James Holmes shot and killed 12 people in a movie theater. Michael was one of the responding officers that night and carried a dying 6-year-old out of the movie theater. Michael allegedly told his wife that all his issues were related to the theater shooting. However, the shooting happened in 2012 and the abuse allegedly began in 2005. After the Aurora shooting, Michael was hailed as a hero, but in 2017, he found himself in a bit of trouble after a video popped up of him stomping on a woman's head during an arrest. The woman filed a lawsuit, which the city of Aurora paid $335,000 to settle. Rachel and her children are currently living in a shelter for domestic abuse victims, when she's not in jail, that is. Hey, Colorado, what the fuck? Students across the United States returned to school last week, and that means it's time for more mass shootings. 14-year-old Colt Gray shot and killed 4 people at Appalachia High School in Barrow County, Georgia on Wednesday, according to 11 Alive. 9 other people were seriously injured. He's currently charged with 4 counts of murder, and additional charges are expected. Here's what we know. Before the shootings occurred on Wednesday, a call came into the school where someone said that 5 schools would be targeted and Appalachia High School would be the first. Colt went to school as usual that day but left his algebra class around 9:45 a.m. He returned a few minutes later with an AR-15 style rifle, the weapon of choice for school shooters. But the doors to Colt's algebra class had locked behind him, and when another student came to the door and saw the weapon, they wouldn't let Colt in. So Colt turned and shot 10 to 15 rounds toward another classroom before walking away. The school was placed in lockdown, and police arrived 3 minutes later. Colt then surrendered to police. Colt's victims have been identified as 14-year-old Mason Schermerhorn, who had recently transferred to Appalachia High School. He enjoyed reading and video games. Before he was killed, Mason texted his mother and told her that he was safe and sheltering in a bathroom. Also killed was 14-year-old Christian Angulo, who was remembered by classmates as being chill and funny. Colt also killed 2 teachers, 53-year-old math teacher Christina Urimi, who was born in Romania and came to the U.S. more than 20 years ago. 39-year-old math teacher Richard Aspinwall was also a coach for the school's football team. Colt was investigated in 2023 when he was 13 years old after posting online threats about committing a school shooting. And according to his aunt, he had asked for mental health treatment recently. Here's a statistic I've mentioned before, but it's worth repeating. There are currently 120.5 guns for every 100 people in America. The next closest country is the Falkland Islands in South America, which has 62 guns for every 100 people. England has 4.6 guns for every 100 people. And in related news, I think I'm moving to England. Rebecca Cheptegei, who represented Uganda in the women's marathon at the Paris Olympics this summer, died on Thursday after her boyfriend set her on fire with gasoline, according to the New York Times. She was 33 years old. The boyfriend, Dixon Ndima, is currently in the hospital recovering from injuries he suffered in the attack and will be charged with murder, according to police. Apparently, Rebecca had gotten into an argument with Dixon when he doused her in gasoline and lit a match. Rebecca's father said that he reported Dixon and that Dixon had been intimidating his daughter, but the police failed to act. 20,000 women were killed in Africa in 2022, the most recent year on record, making it the most dangerous continent for women. Rebecca placed 44th in the marathon at the Summer Olympics, and she recently completed the Abu Dhabi Marathon in 2 hours and 22 minutes. I'm out of breath walking up the stairs to the studio. Sad week, but there is much more to come. Some of it is actually a little lighthearted, so stick with me. We'll get through this week together. I will be right back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with True Crime This Week, brought to you by New Coke. Taste the feeling. Remember Hannah Gutierrez-Reed? She was the on-set armorer for the movie Rust, who was recently convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Helena Hutchins, who Alec Baldwin accidentally shot to death after a gun that should have contained blanks was loaded with a real bullet. Hannah is currently serving an 18-month sentence in prison for that crime, but she was back in court this week on an unrelated case that happened before she went to prison, and it's also pretty weird. According to People.com, Hannah reached a plea deal this week for sneaking a gun into a bar in New Mexico in her butt cheeks. Yeah, authorities became suspicious after Hannah posted a selfie video from inside the bar's restroom in which she brandished the gun and said, quote, "They checked my purse, but they didn't check my butt cheeks. Wah, wah, wah." The plea deal states that Hannah will receive 18 months probation for the offense. When asked for comment, Baldwin replied, "Good God, Lemon." 21-year-old nursing student Muna Pandy was found dead in her Houston apartment on last Friday after being shot in the back of her head, and a sugar daddy has been arrested, according to the New York Post. The investigation began August 26th when Houston police received an anonymous call about a dead body in her apartment. After police discovered her body, they reviewed footage from her security cameras, which she had put in place because she had been stalked by another man. They found video that showed Muna returning to her apartment that day with an unknown man who was holding a gun. He was seen later leaving her apartment alone, carrying her purse. Desperate for leads, the police put the footage online, and earlier this week, a woman called to the station and said she recognized the man in the video from a sugar daddy website. You know, those websites where rich old men seek companionship with younger women in exchange for gifts, the sugar daddy websites. The account led police to 51-year-old Bobby Shaw, who was charged yesterday with capital murder. I miss the good old days when sugar daddies were just the worst candy you could get in your Halloween basket. That's just me. An 85-year-old doctor from Arizona pleaded guilty to manslaughter on Tuesday for helping a woman die by suicide, according to NBC News. Dr. Stephen Miller, who's from Tucson, was arrested earlier this year in New York after he traveled to a motel in Kingston, which is about 80 miles north of New York City, to help a woman end her life. The woman had lived with debilitating pain for decades and had found Miller through an advocacy group called Choice and Dignity. Several states offer medical aid in dying, but a similar law in New York has recently stalled in the state Congress. Under a plea agreement with prosecutors, Miller's sentence will be 5 years of probation. I'm curious what you think about this assisted suicide stuff. Whenever I think about people who make that choice, I'm reminded of the analogy that the writer David Foster Wallace, who also died by suicide, once made. He described the idea of suicide for some people as akin to the choice that people made in the towers on 9/11. That is, for some, like this woman in New York, it's the choice of jumping out of a burning building or surrendering yourself to the worst suffering. We didn't blame the people who jumped that day. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on people like this woman and the doctor who helped her find some relief. This is a real cheery episode, isn't it? Thanks for sticking with me here. Police in Indianapolis solved a 1993 cold case this week thanks to the magic of genetic genealogy, according to CBS News. Here's some good news. 52-year-old Dana Shepard of Columbia, Missouri was arrested and charged with the felony murder and rape of 19-year-old Carmen Van Huss, who was found dead in her Indianapolis apartment in March of 1993 after she failed to show up for work. She'd been stabbed 61 times. At the time, Shepard lived at the same apartment complex as Carmen, but there's no indication that he was a suspect in the case back then. In 2018, the police submitted DNA found at the crime scene to the lab and to genetic genealogists, and that data led them back to Shepard. They collected fresh DNA from Shepard in February of this year and found that the DNA was indeed a match. He's currently awaiting extradition to Indiana. Let's jump over to weird news, shall we? Sports ball player Travis Kelce spoke with lawyers this week to see what he can do about an alleged leaked document that claims to show when he plans to break up with Taylor Swift. What? The document that appeared online seems to be on letterhead from an LA-based PR firm called Full Scope, and it outlines a planned media strategy for breaking up with Taylor Swift at the end of this month. And it includes the release of an official statement 3 days post-breakup to allow for the media frenzy to settle a little bit. Full Scope insists that the document is entirely false and fabricated. However, it should be noted that Kelce himself is repped by a PR firm headed by a guy named Jack Katosian, who has admitted in the past that he puts together showmances for popular celebrities in order to boost their social standing. Be sure to check out Taylor Swift's new single about their breakup, which will appear on her new album, Who Gives a Shit? Over to pop culture. There's a 3-episode true crime miniseries on Netflix that I haven't talked about before that I really want to recommend. It's a good watch in kind of weird, a little out of the normal. It's about the fall of boy band talent manager Lou Pearlman. Pearlman was responsible for forming groups like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, but turned the whole venture into a giant Ponzi scheme that was over $300 million in debt before police caught up with him. In related news, New Kids on the Block is playing the Grog Shop in Cleveland later this week. And the true crime book of the week this week is The Witch of New York by Alex Hortis. On Christmas night, December 25th, 1843, in a serene village on Staten Island, shocked neighbors discover the burnt remains of 24-year-old mother Emmeline Houseman and her infant daughter Anne Eliza. In a perverse nativity, someone bludgeoned to death a mother and child in their home and then covered up the crime with hellfire. When an ambitious district attorney charges Polly Bodine, who's Emmeline's sister-in-law, with a double homicide, the new penny press explodes. Polly is a perfect media villain. She's separated from her husband. She drinks gin, commits adultery, and has had multiple abortions. Between June 1844 and April 1846, the nation was enthralled by her 3 trials, one in Staten Island, one in Manhattan, and one in Newburgh, all for the Christmas murders. After Polly's legal team entered the fray, the press and the public debated not only her guilt, but her character and fate as a fallen woman in society. Public opinion split into different camps. Edgar Allan Poe and Walt Whitman covered her case as young newsmen. P.T. Barnum made a circus out of it. I see what you did there. And James Fenimore Cooper's last novel was inspired by her trials. The Witch of New York is the first narrative history about the dueling trial lawyers, ruthless newsmen, and shameless hucksters who turned the Polly Bodine case into America's formative tabloid trial. If you like historical true crime, you're going to love this. The Witch of New York by Alice Hortis. That is the show for this week. And as always, go out, have a great time, celebrate the weekend. We've survived that week. Take a little respite and back to the grind on Monday with more true crime coming at you next week. We never know. You know, there are people out there that don't realize they're going to be on the show next week. I feel bad for them, but we'll cover it. And in the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.